Callie, we need $2,400 for Marcus's graduation celebration. Wire it by Wednesday. Family takes care of family. I stared at my mother's text message, my hands trembling so violently that I nearly dropped my phone into the sink full of dirty dishes. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. It had been 3 days. 3 days since my 7-year-old son Ethan sat at our kitchen window for 2 hours, his little face pressed against the glass, watching for cars that never came. 3 days since I had to explain, again, why Grandma and Grandpa weren't coming to his birthday party, why Uncle Marcus and Aunt Vanessa couldn't make it, why his cousins, whom he'd been so excited to see, had something more important to do. If you've ever reclaimed your life from people who tried to own it, hit like, share this, and subscribe to Formidable Revenge for more true-life revenge stories. 3 days since I watched my baby blow out his candles alone, except for me and his best friend from school trying so hard to smile while his eyes stayed empty. And now this. My phone buzzed again, another message from Mom. Marcus worked hard for this degree. It's a big milestone. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. The words burned through me like acid, dissolving whatever fragile connection still tethered me to the family that had spent 32 years teaching me that my worth was measured only in what I could provide. I grew up invisible in a house full of mirrors. My parents, Linda and Robert Morrison, built their entire identity around appearances. Robert owned a moderately successful insurance firm in Denver, and Linda volunteered on every charitable committee that would have her, not out of genuine compassion, but because it looked good. Our family Christmas cards were legendary in our neighborhood. Perfectly coordinated outfits, professionally staged. Everyone's smile calibrated to project warmth without authenticity. I was the middle child, sandwiched between Marcus, the golden boy, the athlete, the charmer who could do no wrong, and Vanessa, the baby, the princess who learned early that tears could buy her anything she wanted. My role was simpler. I was the responsible one, the helper, the one who cleaned up messes, mediated fights, and absorbed blame so the family could maintain its pristine facade. If you've ever been the one your family takes for granted, the fixer, the quiet one who's expected to give and never ask, keep watching. You're going to feel this. Have you ever done something tiny that felt like freedom? Tap dop if a small act ever changed everything. When Marcus crashed Dad's car at 16, drunk after a party, I was the one who called a tow truck and helped concoct the story about a deer darting into the road. When Vanessa maxed out Mom's credit card at 18, I was the one who picked up extra shifts at my waitressing job to help pay it down, because that's what sisters do. And when I got pregnant at 23, unplanned, yes, but with a man I loved who died in a construction accident before Ethan was born, I was the one who heard Dad say, "Well, you made your bed, Callie. Don't expect us to bail you out of your mistakes." I never asked them to bail me out. I asked them to show up, to love my son the way they loved Marcus's kids and Vanessa's daughter, to remember his birthday, to call him on Christmas, to see him as more than collateral damage from my poor choices. But that was asking too much. The pattern had been clear for years, but I'd been too conditioned, too desperate for approval to name it. When Marcus bought his first house, Dad co-signed the loan, and Mom organized a housewarming party that cost more than my monthly salary. When Vanessa's daughter turned 5, they rented a bouncy castle, hired a princess character, and invited half the neighborhood. When Ethan turned 7, they texted me the morning of his party. "Something came up. Sorry. We'll make it up to him." They never did. But they always made it up to themselves. Every family gathering I hosted, I was expected to provide the food, clean beforehand, and send everyone home with leftovers. Every holiday I was expected to contribute to the family fund for Marcus and Vanessa's kids' gifts, while Ethan received books from the clearance bin, if they remembered him at all. The breaking point should have come years ago, but when you're trained from childhood to believe that love is conditional and acceptance is earned through service, you keep trying. You keep hoping that if you just give a little more, sacrifice a little deeper, they'll finally see you. They never do. I spent that night after receiving Mom's text sitting at my kitchen table, Ethan asleep upstairs, scrolling through years of messages and bank statements. $1,800 for Marcus's wedding bachelor party. $900 for Vanessa's emergency dental work that insurance should have covered. $2,200 for Marcus's new furniture after his divorce. $1,500 for a family vacation I couldn't attend because I was working. $650 for Vanessa's daughter's dance competition fees. The list went on and on. Over 6 years, I'd given them nearly $18,000. Money I'd scraped together from my job as a medical receptionist, from selling my belongings, from skipping meals so Ethan could have what he needed. And not once, not a single time, had they shown up for my son when it mattered. My hands moved before my conscious mind caught up. I opened my banking app, navigated to the transfer section, and typed in my mother's account information. Transfer amount, $1. Message, best wishes for Marcus's graduation. This is all the family support I can provide. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I blocked both my parents' numbers, Marcus's number and Vanessa's number. Every social media connection, gone. Every avenue they'd used to manipulate, guilt, and extract from me, severed. The silence that followed was immediate and terrifying and exhilarating. I didn't hear from them for 2 days. I began to hope foolishly that they'd simply written me off and moved on to their next source of funding. Then, on Friday evening, someone started pounding on my door. "Callie, open this door right now!" Dad's voice boomed through the wood, rattling the frame. "We need to talk about your little stunt." Ethan looked up from his homework, eyes wide with fear. I put my finger to my lips and pulled out my phone, opening the camera app. "Dad, I'm not opening the door," I called through the wood, my voice calmer than I felt. "If you need to talk, we can do it another time." "Another time?" he laughed, bitter and cold. "You send your mother $1, a fucking dollar, when your brother needs help, and you think you get to dictate terms?" "Marcus is 29 years old. He can fund his own party." "That's not how this family works, and you know it." The door shook as he pounded it again. "I co-signed on this house, Callie. That means I have rights. Now open this goddamn door before I use my key." My blood turned to ice. The house. The one thing I'd thought was mine. The place where Ethan and I were supposed to be safe. 5 years ago, when I'd scraped together enough for a down payment, Dad had insisted on co-signing because my credit wasn't good enough alone. I'd been grateful then, desperate for stability. But now I understood. It was never about helping me. It was about maintaining control. "Go ahead and try your key," I said quietly, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I heard fumbling, then the metallic scrape of a key trying to fit a lock that no longer recognized it. Because 6 months ago, when I'd started to see the pattern clearly, I'd done something I never told anyone about. I'd refinanced. The house was now in my name alone. Dad's co-signature was gone. His legal claim dissolved. I'd changed the locks the same week.
"What the hell?" Dad's voice rose to a shout. "Callie, what did you do?"
"I made sure my son has a safe home," I said. "Now please leave, or I'm calling the police."
"You're calling the—"
he sputtered. Then his voice dropped to something dark and threatening. "You have no idea what you've just done. No idea." Through the peephole, I watched him storm to his car, phone already at his ear, probably calling Mom, probably calling Marcus, probably plotting their next move. I locked every window, checked every door, and held Ethan close that night, knowing the worst was yet to come. The worst came at 2:47 a.m., when police lights flooded my front yard. I stumbled downstairs in my bathrobe, heart hammering, to find 2 officers at my door and my father standing behind them, face twisted with righteous fury. "Ma'am, we received a call about a child welfare concern at this address," the older officer said, his tone professional but weary. "Your father claims your son is being neglected." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward. That's not true, I managed. My son is asleep upstairs. He's healthy and safe and— She's unstable, Dad interrupted, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. She's cut off her entire family. She's not feeding the boy properly. She's— Sir, please, the younger officer said, holding up a hand. Then to me, Ma'am, may we come in? I wanted to refuse, wanted to tell them they needed a warrant, but I also knew that refusing would make me look guilty, would give Dad ammunition for whatever narrative he was building, so I let them in. They found Ethan asleep in his room, surrounded by clean sheets, stuffed animals, and the birthday cards from his school friends. They found a refrigerator full of food. They found medical records showing every vaccine up to date, every dental appointment kept, every well-child check completed on schedule. They found a home filled with love, not neglect. The older officer's expression shifted as he looked around, then back at my father, who'd followed us inside despite not being invited. Mr. Morrison, these allegations appear to be unfounded, he said carefully. Your daughter's home is clean. The child is clearly well cared for, and— You don't understand, Dad said desperately. She's having a mental breakdown. She sent us $1 when we needed help. She changed the locks on a house I co-signed for. A house you're no longer on the loan for, I interrupted quietly, pulling out my phone. I have the refinancing paperwork. The house is solely in my name. He has no legal right to be here or to have a key. The officer's eyes sharpened. Is that true, Mr. Morrison? Dad's face flushed red. That's not the point. Actually, sir, that is exactly the point. The younger officer stepped forward. If you have no legal claim to this property, and you attempted to use a key to gain entry earlier today, that could constitute attempted trespassing. And filing a false police report is a crime. I watched my father's face transform from fury to shock to something close to fear. He'd never been challenged like this, never been told he was wrong, never been held accountable. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. She's my daughter. That's my grandson. I have a right. You have no rights here, I said, my voice steady now, strong. Not anymore. Officers, I'd like to formally request that he leave my property, and I'd like to know how to file for a restraining order. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. Dad filed a CPS report, forcing a social worker to visit my home. She spent 3 hours documenting Ethan's well-being, my employment, my support system, and my home environment. She left with a notation that the report was malicious and unfounded. Mom started a phone tree, calling distant relatives to paint me as mentally ill, ungrateful, and a bad mother. Half of them called to lecture me. I blocked every number. Marcus showed up at my workplace, demanding to talk. Security escorted him out. Vanessa sent a series of unhinged emails calling me selfish, cruel, and jealous. I forwarded them all to my lawyer, because yes, I'd hired a lawyer, a damn good one. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she specialized in family law, with a particular expertise in restraining orders and parental alienation cases. When I showed her the documentation I'd been keeping, every text message, every bank transfer, every instance of manipulation and neglect, her eyes lit up. This is airtight, she said. Your father is escalating because he's lost control. We're going to shut this down permanently. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, I had a temporary restraining order that kept Dad at least 100 yards away from my home and workplace. The waiting was agony, but I used the time well. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with because family came first. I took Ethan to parks and museums and ice cream shops, just the two of us, building memories untainted by disappointment. I started therapy to unpack 32 years of conditioning and gaslighting, and I documented everything. Every violation of the temporary restraining order. Dad drove past my house 4 times, documented by my doorbell camera. Every harassing message from flying monkeys. 17 different relatives sent guilt-tripping texts. Every attempt to manipulate or control. Mom tried to access Ethan's school records claiming grandparent rights that didn't exist. By the time we walked into that courtroom, I had a 3-inch binder of evidence. Judge Helena Ramirez was a stern woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened to Dad's lawyer argue that I was keeping a grandson from his loving grandparents, that family disagreements shouldn't result in legal intervention, that I was overreacting to normal family dynamics. Then Patricia stood up. Your Honor, the petitioner has documented 6 years of financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and blatant favoritism that excluded her child from family events and relationships. When she finally established a boundary, the respondent attempted to illegally enter her home, filed false police reports, weaponized child protective services, and violated the temporary restraining order multiple times. She walked the judge through every piece of evidence. The birthday parties Ethan was excluded from, the thousands of dollars I'd given while receiving nothing, the threatening messages, the doorbell camera footage, the CPS report that had been dismissed, the social worker's statement, the police reports. I watched my father's face drain of color as his carefully constructed narrative collapsed under the weight of documentation. Mr. Morrison, Judge Ramirez said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade, you have used every tool at your disposal, legal, familial, and emotional, to punish your daughter for establishing reasonable boundaries. You have demonstrated a pattern of manipulation and control that has no place in a healthy family relationship. Your actions have been vindictive, potentially illegal, and deeply harmful. She looked down at her notes, then back up at my father. The temporary restraining order is hereby made permanent for a period of 4 years. During this time, you are prohibited from contacting the petitioner or her minor child directly or through third parties. You are prohibited from coming within 500 yards of her home, workplace, or her child's school. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. The gavel came down. I'd won. The aftermath was quieter than I'd expected. Marcus's graduation party happened without my $2,400 contribution. I heard through a mutual friend that it was a modest backyard barbecue instead of the lavish celebration they'd planned. Marcus apparently complained that I'd ruined his big day. Vanessa stopped speaking to me entirely, blocked me on social media, and told her daughter that Ethan and I moved away. I grieved the niece I'd never really get to know, but I didn't break. Mom sent one final email 6 months later. You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy. I deleted it without responding, because here's what I learned. You can't destroy something that was never built on solid ground. My family wasn't destroyed by my boundaries. It was revealed. All I did was stop pretending that dysfunction was love, that exploitation was duty, that silence was loyalty. Ethan turned 8 last month. We had a party with the school friends, their parents, who've become my friends, and my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who bakes the most incredible birthday cakes and has adopted us as honorary family. Ethan blew out his candles surrounded by people who genuinely loved him, who showed up for him, who saw him as more than an afterthought. He didn't ask about his grandparents. He doesn't remember them much anymore, and that's okay. Sometimes I think about that dollar I sent, one single dollar that bought me my freedom. Best money I ever spent. I'm sitting on my back porch watching Ethan play with his best friend when my phone buzzes. It's Patricia, my lawyer. You're going to want to see this, the text says, followed by a link to a news article. Local insurance executive under investigation for fraud. The photo shows my father's face, older and harder than I remember. According to the article, Dad's insurance firm is under investigation for systematically denying legitimate claims while pocketing premiums. Several former employees have come forward. The state insurance commissioner is involved. I should feel vindicated, triumphant, proof that karma exists. Instead, I just feel tired. I delete the link without reading further. His choices, his consequences. I'm done carrying his weight. Ethan's laugh rings out across the yard, clear and joyful and free. That's the sound of my revenge. Not his downfall, but my son's happiness. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's not explosive or dramatic. Sometimes revenge is simply choosing peace over performance, boundaries over belonging, truth over tradition. Sometimes revenge is teaching your son that love isn't supposed to hurt, that family isn't supposed to cost you everything you have, that he deserves better than people who view him as less than. Sometimes revenge is the quiet choice to stop playing by rules designed to keep you small. And sometimes, revenge costs exactly $1. If you've ever reclaimed your life from people who tried to own it, hit like, share this, and subscribe to Formidable Revenge for more true-life revenge stories. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers through a locked door.